Most holy and righteous and loving Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time very thankful that you have blessed us with another day to wake up and to come to this place to be able to not only study from your word, but to have the opportunity to worship you in spirit and in truth. And we're so thankful, Father, that we can come here and do so without fear of being persecuted from the outside world, that we can do so peacefully, and that we have so many blessings, Father, that many other Christians in this world don't have. We ask that you be with them and continue to strengthen them as they go through persecution, that they will continue to remain faithful and go on to their reward when this life is over. We ask that you be with the congregation here, that we will continue to grow in number, but most importantly, Father, that we will continue to grow spiritually, and that we will always be here together as a family to help each other get to heaven. We ask that you be with us throughout the remainder of this day, and that you will forgive us of any sins we've committed. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we are in Esther. We've looked at the first 4 chapters. We're going to speed through a little bit and try to get through 5, 6, and 7. So we're not going to take the time to read. We'll just discuss it. I would encourage you, if you haven't read it in a while, to go ahead and read through the remaining book of Esther. There's only 10 chapters. Chapter 10 is very short. So we'll do 5, 6, and 7, and then, Lord willing, next Sunday we'll finish up with Esther. And so we ended with the decree that had been made by Haman, that all the Jewish people were going to be completely wiped out. They were going to be destroyed. And Mordecai had found out about this decree, and he told Esther that this is possibly her moment to do something. And he said, you're not in the palace by accident. Maybe you are here so that you can save the people from destruction. Maybe God put you in this place at this specific time to save his people. Now, again, Esther had not been summoned by the king. Anybody remember how long it had been before she had been summoned by the king?
30 days.
30 days. All right. So what does that say? She was overdue. That's right. Definitely overdue. Did he show any care to see her? Obviously not. 30 days, and he was busy with other things. And so a month has gone by, and he has not called for her. And there is one law for anyone who decides to come into the king's presence without being called. Again, it's hard for us to fathom that, because we don't live in a society where we're going to be killed if we just approach someone. But the king, if you approached the king, didn't matter who you were, without being summoned, you were put to death. Whether you were his queen or not, you were going to be put to death. And so the only way to avoid that, if you approach the king without being called, what did he have to do that would spare your life? You remember? Yep, the scepter. If he held out his scepter, then you were okay. All right, if he didn't, then you would be put to death. And so Esther, again, seems to be out of favor with the king because he's not called her for a month. But she's going to put her life into God's hands. And she's going to go before the king, and she's going to beg for the life of her people. Now, does the king know who she is yet? No, he doesn't. So again, this young girl is now going to approach the king without being called. And then secondly, she is going to reveal something that she has not revealed to him yet. And that is, she's actually a Jew. And so again, that puts a lot of pressure on this young girl. And so the Jewish people, they're fasting for 3 days as she prepares to make her request. And so in Esther chapter 5, we see the quiet hand of God working in these dark circumstances. And so in verses 1 through 14 of chapter 5, we're told that it is now the third day. The third day not only marks the end of the people fasting for their lives, but again, it's also used as a metaphor throughout scriptures for the time of deliverance. Abraham goes to offer his son on the third day. Jacob escapes from Laban on the third day. Jonah, how many days in the fish? 3 days and 3 nights. Hosea proclaims that God's rescue of the people will come on the third day in Hosea chapter 6 and in verse 2. And so we are again left with a foreshadowing hope of deliverance to come. Esther puts on her royal robes. She goes into the inner court. When the king saw Queen Esther standing in his court, she again wins favor in his sight. And it's the same word that is used when Joseph found favor in the sight of Potiphar, if you remember that, and the keeper of the prison. Esther finds favor with the king, and he extends his golden scepter toward her, which means he accepts it. Everything's going to be okay. But she walks up, she touches the scepter, a sign of acceptance. That's a sign of basically saying thank you for accepting me. And so for Esther again to come without being summoned indicated to the king there's something serious here. She wants something. She's not just going to show up and put her life at risk unless it's for an important reason. And so he asked her to tell him her request. He even says, "It shall be given you even to half of my kingdom." So whatever you request, I'm going to give it to you. So good words to hear if you're Esther. But again, she hasn't revealed who she is. So it could take a turn for the worse. We don't know. But again, the point is not that he would really give her half of his kingdom. I doubt he would give her half his kingdom. But I think the point is that you go ahead and make your request, and I will give it to you because you have found favor in my eyes. But it's interesting with this request that she doesn't just blurt out the problem. She doesn't just blurt it out and the decree that has been given regarding the annihilation of the Jews. Instead, she wants to seek more of the king's favor. And so she simply asks the king to come to what? Anybody know? A banquet. That's exactly right. She invites him to a banquet, but she doesn't merely invite the king. There's someone else that she wants to show up at this banquet. Anybody know who that is? Haman. That's right. So she asks the king, she invites him to a banquet, and she also wants Haman to come to this banquet. So she is working this plan out, and we're seeing how it's unfolding. But the king and Haman, they go to the queen's banquet. But the king is not naive to think that the only purpose of her risking her life is to invite him to a banquet. You know, he's a smart man. He knows there's something else. Why would she risk her life to come before me simply to invite me to a banquet? That just doesn't make sense. Well, the king asks Esther again, what is it that you want? There's something. I know there's something. Tell me what it is that you want. And she says that if she has found favor in his eyes, then let us have another banquet tomorrow. Then at tomorrow's feast, she says that she's going to make her request known to the king. So again, it gets put off. Haman leaves this banquet absolutely thrilled to death. He thinks everything's good, everything's wonderful. He's been invited twice to this exclusive banquet with the king and queen. So again, put yourself in his shoes. King and the queen inviting me, nobody else, to this banquet. But when Haman again sees Mordecai, his happiness happiness is now filled with what? Hatred, anger. Because Mordecai still refuses to bow before him. But he restrains himself, and he doesn't do anything to Mordecai. He just lets it go. So Haman tells all of his friends and his wife about what a great day he had and how we're going to have another banquet tomorrow. He then tells how the king honored him above all the other officials and servants. But look at verse 13 in chapter 5. It says, "Still, none of this satisfies me, since I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate all the time." So he is not satisfied. None of this satisfies him because he still sees Mordecai there at the gate, and that's driving him nuts. He just does not like it. So his wife has a solution. Anybody know what that solution is? Have him hung, that's right. Build a pole 75 feet high and have the king impale Mordecai on it and leave him hanging there. Then, after you do that, go to the banquet and enjoy yourself. Haman loves this advice. And so what he does is he goes about to have this pole constructed, right? So you can see, in your mind, you can see Mordecai. He's just constantly complaining about this Mordecai. And so his wife says, "You know what? I'm sick of your complaining. Here's what you do. Just kill the man, get rid of him, and then enjoy yourself. Have a good time." And so, as I said, he loves this advice. He has the pole constructed. And this is going to be an execution for who to see? Everybody. That's right. That's exactly right. 75 feet high. Everybody's going to walk by. Everybody's going to see this, which is the purpose of having that pole so tall. But I want us to see one more thing, in chapter 5. Again, does this sound familiar? That Haman cannot have any joy. He cannot have any happiness because of his circumstances, because of just one person. He's letting one person just get under his skin and drive him nuts. This has a parallel to King Ahab, who is so upset that he cannot even have a vineyard, if you remember that story. So his wife's plan is to kill a man who owns the vineyard. Just kill him. Here we see Haman's wife with the same advice. Just kill the man causing you trouble and be happy. And so again, it's sad that we cannot be happy when things are going well in our lives. Think about that. How many times have we missed out on happiness because of one thing in our life that is just getting under our skin, or maybe one person, right? That's just getting under our skin, and we can't have that happiness. You go to work and you have that one coworker that you just drives you nuts, and then it makes you have a bad day at work because of this one person. I think many of us have been there before. And so, again, we need to look at what we do have. Don't focus on that one problem. We need to focus on what we do have. But Haman can't do that. He can't do that. And so he has another evil plan created. And not only does Haman desire the extermination of all the Jews, within the year, but I want Mordecai dead now. Tomorrow's the day. He is going to be executed tomorrow. I'm getting rid of that parasite that I just can't stand. And so, again, a hopeless situation appears to be even more hopeless, because now Mordecai's life is on the line the very next day. Any thoughts on that in chapter 5? Jim?
You're talking about, he's focusing on the one thing that bothers him, in this case Mordecai, rather than all his blessings. He's got a great job, great position, all this. And it kind of reminded me of the serpent and Eve. Mm-hmm. They had a whole garden that they could eat from,
Oh, yeah.
But he got to focus on the one tree that they can't, the one fruit that they can eat, rather than everything else that,
Right.
It's the same kind of, just, focus on the blessings when you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah. Now, and again, he doesn't know the purpose of Esther having these banquets. He doesn't know that he's about to be revealed. All he knows at this time is the king and the queen has invited only him to a banquet. You would think that would, just make his day because, how honored am I to go before the king and the queen to be invited to this excluded banquet. But no, he might be happy a little bit, but that he's angry because of one man. Now there's a lot of Jews. There are a lot of Jews, but this one, again, it's like that parasite, right? That just like a mosquito, that keeps and you just get irritated with it. That's Mordecai to Haman, and he wants to just squash it and be done with it. Any other thoughts? When you get to chapter 6, it just so happens that the king he's unable to sleep. There's no better way to get sleepy than to have a servant read you the book of memorable deeds regarding the empire. And so that's what he does. He has someone read him a bedtime story to get him to go to sleep. So he's going to listen to all the great things that he's done during his reign, right? So that's what puts him to sleep. You are so wonderful. You are so great. Let me tell you of all the great things that you've done. And so he simply goes off to sleep. It turns out that in the record we have the work of Mordecai, who saved the king from assassination from his 2 personal guards. So that is mentioned. And the king asked, oh, yeah, what kind of recognition did Mordecai get? Yeah, nothing. Nothing had been done for him. And so the king's like, that's not right. And so no sooner had this answer been given, Haman walks in. Haman walks in with his plan to have Mordecai impaled. So the king asks what should be done for the man that the king delights to honor. And Haman, in his arrogance, thinks that the king is talking about him. You see? He's about to be, hit between the eyes here. And so he thinks it's about him. So he says that the king should have the royal robe brought. Put it on that person and have him ride on the king's horse in the square of the city, with the one pulling the horse proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." So Haman thinks that this is for him. So this is what I think you should do for me. And so the king absolutely loves this idea and tells Haman to go and do all of this for Mordecai. Can you just see the rage? What? You want me to do this for the man that I'm about to have killed? He's not going to be happy. And so rather than getting Mordecai impaled, Haman has to honor Mordecai by his own words. So again, he's not too thrilled about this. But after he does this for Mordecai, Haman rushes home, covers his head in grief over what he had to do. Nothing could have been more deplorable to Haman at this time. Nothing could have been more just disgusting and deplorable than to honor Mordecai. It not happening. And Haman tells his wife what just happened. And this is what his wife said about all of this. She said, "Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin." So she's telling him, okay, you can't stand against this man. But the key point she makes is you cannot stand against the people of God. So now her tune has kind of changed a little bit. You will not prevail against him. You're going to fall before Mordecai. So now he's hearing this from his wife. And so no one can stop or change what's going to happen. Not even the most powerful king in the most powerful empire on the face of the earth. Nobody can change this. Again, this even foreshadows the words of Pilate's wife. You remember that? With Pilate's wife, who tells him, what did she tell Pilate about dealing with Jesus? You remember?
Don't deal.
Don't do it. Leave it alone. Don't get involved in this. Right? Stay away from it. And so again, you have some parallels there from Old Testament and New Testament. But there's no time now to reverse course at this point. You just can't reverse course. We got to keep going down that path. And so the king's eunuchs arrive to take Haman to the banquet. And when you get to chapter 7 places us at the feast with the king and Haman. And so let's look at chapter 7, and we'll go ahead and read verses 1 through 10. The king and Haman came to feast with Esther the queen. Once again, on the second day, while drinking wine, the king asked Esther, Queen Esther, whatever you ask will be given to you. Whatever you seek, even to half the kingdom, will be done. Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if the king is pleased, spare my life. This is my request. And spare my people. This is my desire. For my people and I have been sold to destruction, death, and annihilation. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept silent. Indeed, the trouble wouldn't be worth burdening the king. King Ahasuerus spoke up and asked Queen Esther, who is this, and where is the one who would devise such a scheme? Esther answered, the adversary and enemy is this evil Haman. Haman stood terrified before the king and queen. The king arose in anger and went from where they were drinking wine to the palace garden. Haman remained to beg Queen Esther for his life because he realized the king was planning something terrible for him. Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, would he actually violate the queen while I am in the house? As soon as the statement left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, there is a gallows 75 feet tall at Haman's house that he made for Mordecai, who gave the report that saved the king. The king said, hang him on it. They hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's anger subsided. So the king again asked Queen Esther again, what is your request? And she finally reveals what her request is. I want you to spare my life, and I want you to spare the life of my people. The king, how does he feel about this when he hears it? He's angry. He's furious. We would use the term outraged. He is very, very, very angry at this point. And he demands to know who put this together. Now, could you imagine? Put yourself in Haman's shoes at this point. He's sitting right there. He's hearing all of this. He sees the king outraged. And he knows that it's about to come down on him. And so Esther responds that an adversary has done this. An enemy has done this horrible deed. And she says, it is this evil Haman. So again, that's, you ever been put in a position where you're like, oh, you got caught? And now you have to answer for that? This is Haman. He's now caught red-handed. He sees the king is outraged. And so, again, you could just see the color in Haman's body just disappear. He's terrified now of what's about to happen. And so the king gets up in a rage and steps into his garden. I guess you can say that have you ever been so mad you just have to get away from the situation? That's kind of what it seems like he's doing, right? He's so furious. He's like, I've got to remove myself from this situation. And so Haman now has to scramble to figure out what it is he's going to do. What am I going to do? I am in a bad spot right now. His only hope is to do what? Because if he runs away, he's doomed. So his only hope now is to do what? Beg for mercy. Beg for mercy. He needs to plead to the queen for his life. And so he does that. But Haman, as he begins pleading with the queen, apparently Esther is on a couch, and Haman falls onto this couch where Esther was. At the very same moment that the king returns from the garden to see what almost looks like Haman is assaulting Esther. That's kind of what the picture is painting here. So you talk about, bad timing for Haman, right? He's pleading for his life, and the king comes back in, and he falls on the couch, and now it looks like he should be, he's assaulting the queen. And so the guards immediately cover Haman's face, and they take him away. And verse 9 proclaims that great reversal, where you see in verse 9, Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, there is a gallows 75 feet tall at Haman's house that he made for Mordecai, who gave the report that saved the king. And the king said, you know what, hang him on it. What Haman was building, you hang him on that. And so the king commands for Haman to be hung on that very pole. And the king took the signet ring that he had given to Haman. Now who does he give it to? Mordecai. Mordecai is also appointed over Haman's estate. When you get to chapter 8, verses 1 and 2, the same day King Ahasuerus awarded Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Mordecai entered the king's presence because Esther had revealed her relationship to Mordecai. The king removed his signet ring that he had recovered from Haman and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther put him in charge of Haman's estate. You see that reversal there? Now, go back to where we started. The Jews are going to be annihilated. Well, first of all, Queen Esther gets taken from her family. And she's placed with all these different women. She's got to find favor with the king. She's never going home again, whether she finds favor or she becomes a queen or not. And then you have where she does become the queen, and now Haman plots to kill her people. And again, you see where the Jews are in confusion and chaos. They're about to be annihilated. Then you find Mordecai, who now is on the verge of death the very next day. So his death's going to come quick, and a violent death, and everybody's going to see it. And Haman's hatred for Mordecai, look at what happened. Haman loses everything, and Mordecai gains everything. Right? So you see a complete reversal. But again, what I want us to see in this text is the quiet hand of God moving. You do not see God speaking anywhere in here to Esther, to Mordecai, telling them what to do, telling them what to say. He's there. He's very much a part of this. But it's that quiet hand of God that is moving. Mordecai is sentenced to death, but instead of death, he's raised to life, and his enemy is destroyed. The signet ring, again, taken from Haman, given to Mordecai. The enemy is now made to proclaim the greatness of Mordecai. And all through these chapters, we see what appeared to be hopelessness and doom reversed into hope and greatness. Again, God knew what he was doing. He was there the whole time. Mordecai had great faith because he said, maybe you are here for this moment. Esther had faith because she was willing to do it, even at the risk of her life. And so again, it looked like all hope was lost. Not only for Esther and Mordecai, but for all the Jewish people. But again, did you see the quiet hand of God moving throughout what we've read so far in the book of Esther? Through a simple series of common events, God rescued Mordecai and had Haman impaled on his own pole. 2 simple feasts or banquets given by Esther. A sleepless night by a king, an arrogant and vengeful Haman, all worked together for the rescue of Mordecai. You see how it all kind of comes together? Simple, seemingly insignificant events began to work for the rescue of Mordecai and for the Jewish people. So again, as I said, this is an amazing book. A book that God is not mentioned by name, the only book he's not mentioned by name, but you can see him all throughout in this book. Any thoughts? No? All right. Well, we've only got about 1 minute left, and so instead of just getting into chapter 8, we'll go ahead and stop there, and we will finish up Esther, Lord willing, next Sunday.